Tasha's Cauldron of Everything has been out for a bit now, and so I figured it's time to give my unsolicited opinion. Hey fellow Game Masters, I'm Richard Quiner, and welcome back to the RPG Daily, your dose of tabletop role-playing games helping you build your world and master your game. Today we're going to talk about Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, my thoughts on it, what it could have been, what it actually was, and just kind of a general review. Before we dive into this though, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I invite you to do so. We will be posting a lot more videos here in 2021. Also, be sure to check out my Instagram and join us on Discord to just hang out and chat D&D. All that being said, first here's the TLDR of Tasha's Cauldron and Everything. It was hyped up to be such a big game-changing book for the game system in general, promising custom lineage/races, being able to change your racial traits willy-nilly, this whole idea that they're going to flip the whole system on its head. And what I really feel like we got was just a safe softball pitch of a book with just a few options and some neat things you can do. Now let me just explain a little bit of why I say it's just kind of a nifty thing and not really the game-changing book that they had promised or had kind of hyped it up to be. For the longest time, Dungeons & Dragons has this system where you have character races, and each race has character traits or racial traits that come into play. This has been around for a very long time, and a lot of times it's dealt with outdated tropes of fantasy stories or stories in general. The trope that there is a race of creatures who is inherently evil was this big thing that Wizards of the Coast decided that they had to change. They were going to fix a problem that the players and DMs had been fixing on their own for generations. The idea of a drow, for example, in the lore, they had always been evil. Now they're saying, well, they're not necessarily evil. They can change their ways. They can have different beliefs. Players and DMs have been doing that forever. But now Wizards of the Coast, they're showing up to be our heroes and fix that. So they introduced Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and they brought this out with a big fix and big changes to the game. How the game is going to work was going to be big changes. It fizzled, in my opinion. It was very lackluster, and the stuff that we wanted to see, or the stuff that I wanted to see as big changes, were just kind of thrown in as an afterthought, it felt like. That's my genuine thought, is they had everything written. They had all the subclasses, all the feats, all the magic items, and they were like, you know what, we need to add a little more, so let's throw something in there and see how it sticks. Case in point being, the idea of a custom lineage is a cool idea. The idea of being able to change your racial traits or ability scores depending on your character's backstory is a really cool idea. It leans into the idea of nurture versus nature, where you are raised and who you are raised by has more to do with how you will turn out as a person than your DNA. Cool. I'm on board with that. And in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, they do touch on that. They go through and they give you a step-by-step list of how you can change your racial traits. I should rephrase that. They give you a step-by-step list of things you can swap out for your character to change their history and to change their racial statistics, we'll say. So, for example, if you were a dwarf and you have a +2 to Constitution, for example, you are allowed to change that Constitution score to something else. You can put it on as a +2 on Charisma if you want, depending on where you were raised and how you were raised. I'm all on board with that. They also made it so you can change out armor and weapon proficiencies that are given to you by the race you pick. They've also changed how you can pick languages and skill proficiencies based on the race. What they did not do is give you a chance to change your racial traits that are a part of the DNA. For example, a Dragonborn will always have a breath weapon. A Drow will always have sunlight sensitivity as a racial trait. These are things that are just part of them on a biological level, and so it makes sense that they wouldn't change those things. I'm fine with all that. I'm fine with changing the traits of the built-in races, but what I wasn't fine with was they have this section that is custom lineage. Let's build your own custom lineage, and it's one paragraph, and it tells you the choices you have for building your custom lineage, which, if we look at it, and I'll put it on the screen, in a nutshell, it's letting you build another type of variant human with the option for dark vision if you want. That's kind of how I see it. You have your ability score, you can have dark vision, you can have a feat if you want, you get some things, but everything else is very simple. You are a humanoid, you are medium size, your speed is 30. That's pretty standard. Everyone is kind of like that at first. But what I could have seen, what would have been awesome in this book, is if they said, we're going to let you make custom lineage, a custom race that will fit your character. And then they give us all the racial traits that are in the books and a way for us to use those to build our custom lineage how we want. If I want to be an elf that has a high constitution and is resistant to poison, maybe it's not an elf necessarily, but you get the idea of it's a creature you can build with these racial traits. You could build a turtle with a breath weapon, for example. These kind of ideas are something they could have really leaned into and played with in this customization and for the sake of making something interesting. But what instead we got was something really safe and basic and lackluster, in my opinion. Another thing that I really saw they had a lot of potential with, but they fell flat, is group patrons. They showed a lot of information for their group patrons. A lot of role tables, a lot of ideas, role tables for quests, role tables for contacts, role tables for ranks and roles within a group organization. And then at the end they had a section, there's a be your own group patron, meaning your adventure party could be a patron for a group, essentially. To sum that up, it says, read Running a Business in the Dungeon Master Guide. And Running a Business in the Dungeon Master Guide has some numbers. There's some tables you roll on to see how much money you have to spend, how much money you can potentially earn, but it doesn't give you anything that can help you actually build out an organization. And while I will be one to say homebrew it and make this stuff up, I'm doing that with one of my players right now, and it's a lot of work, and I don't know if I'm doing it right. I don't know if I'm making the fair decisions for how these organizations are going to work. One of my adventure parties, they own a tavern called the Stony Tankard, and one of them is the head of a thieves guild that he recently wanted to change the name to Blood Moon. I'm trying to figure out how he's going to run a thieves guild. I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to have this tavern working. The tavern is easy because I can look at the DMG, but the thieves guild, I want to be able to send NPCs on missions. He wants to be able to have it have a real impact on the story, and Tasha's kind of gave me nothing. So I'm still working on that just on my own thing, and that's fine. But again, it just goes to that statement I said where WotC just played it safe. They just played it safe. Now I went completely off script for this video at this point. I had my outline, and now I'm just kind of rambling. Those are a couple of the things where I felt that WotC just fell short and they were a little too comfortable in what they were doing and just kind of threw those in as an afterthought. What I thought they really did a good job on, though, were a couple even shorter things. The section in Tasha's on the Session 0. Everyone's been saying use a Session 0 for a very long time. It's a very important part of long-term campaigns. And finally, there's a strict guide or a real guide on how to run it and what the important things are to talk about during the Session 0. So I really appreciated that in Tasha's, and I thought they did a really good job there. I do like the magic tattoos finally be included, but that's a player option. I'll touch on player options in just a little bit. In terms of other neat things that they've thrown in, supernatural regions was a really cool one. Magical effects. They have a lot of different ideas that can inspire you. A supernatural region, they have roll tables that can help you figure out a region of an area you want to use that can inspire your game to give you something a little more interesting for your players that you may not have thought of before. So I like that kind of inspirational stuff. When it came to the player decisions, you notice I didn't really touch on those throughout this whole thing. It's because the player options, they're nothing new. It's stuff we've seen over and over again, meaning almost every other book comes with new subclasses and a new class, or new spells, new magic items, new feats. We see that a lot. So in my opinion, what Tasha's turned into at the end of the day was a player supplement with their subclasses and things that they could do and the feats, with a little bit of stuff for the DMs, because they wanted to say it was something of everything, similar to Xanathar's guide. So while this book does add something to the game, I don't think it changed it in a way that they had hyped it up to be. I was going into this thinking it was going to be crazy changes, and they're not that crazy. It's kind of like, oh, okay, that's what it is. I was looking at this and getting excited for us, really hoping that it would be something I would either love the new rules and the changes they made, or I would hate the new rules and I wouldn't use them. I would have strong feelings about it, and really all I came out with was indifference. I told my players, I said, you can use the Tasha stuff if you want. I'm not gonna make a stink if they find something in Tasha's. It just goes right alongside with it. Even though they made a whole fuss of these are optional rules, you have to check in with your DM if you're gonna use it. If you really think about it, everything they publish is like that, where the DM can choose to not use that rule if they really want to. So for me, Tasha's was just kind of a disappointment, if I'm being honest. That's my 1.5 cents. I know there will be a lot of people who disagree. There are some really fun feats. There are great choices for characters, but as a whole book, meh. That was my opinion. This show has a sponsor today. It's actually sponsored by my Etsy store. I do 3D printing. It is called Adventures in 3D. I sell miniature models that I 3D print and send to people. So if you are interested in checking out what I have on there, I'm posting new designs every day that I get from other Patreon companies, groups where they do some amazing models, and I get to take them and make some really nice prints on my 3D printers, and then I send them out to customers. If you're interested in checking that out, the link for that will be in the description. As a thank you for sitting through this video and just being a part of the channel, if you use the code RPGDaily10 on checkout on Etsy, you'll get 10% off of your order, and that supports the channel. It helps me get things going, and I appreciate that. So go check that out if you feel inclined. All that being said, now, what are your thoughts on Tasha's Cauldron of Everything? Did you think it was a flop like I did? Or did you think it was a real great, impactful change into the game of Dungeons & Dragons? Let me know in the comments below, but be polite about it. I've been Richard. Thanks for watching.